100 years since women got the vote, with a record 32% female MPs in Parliament, you would have hoped that things were improving for women in Westminster. But when it comes to abuse, it's getting worse. We spoke to 30 female MPs. 29 of the 30 told us they've received abusive messages in the last year. 16, more than half, said they've had death threats, and 25 of them, 86%, said the abuse is getting worse. In the week of International Women's Day, it feels like a good time to reflect on where we are on the journey towards gender equality. Now, I've been working in Westminster for more than a decade, and I've been really shocked by the explosion in abuse that's been directed towards MPs. And the real worry, of course, is that it's going to put women off coming to work in Parliament. At a breakfast organised by Their World, a charity run by Sarah Brown, guests had their own priorities.
I would end all FGC in the world.
And FGC is just a
female genital cutting.
That's the thing that...
That's the one thing I'm interested in. Well, I'm interested in lots of things. I'm mainly interested in cake. But second to cake, I'm interested in making sure no young girls are at all cut in this world.
I'm not sure we have achieved equality if you look at the kind of gender pay gap and the disparity. I think we have made progress and that should be recognised, but I still think we have some way to go, and I think we need to still keep the attention.
I don't want any 15-year-old girl watching this to think that they should not be involved in politics, because they should be in politics. We need 8 more women MPs on the Labour benches to be 50%, so make sure it's you.
We caught up with Sarah Brown after the event.
15 million girls never setting foot in a school. Why is that happening, and what impact does it have on their lives?
Well, if you look at who's out of school around the world and why they're out of school, it'll be poverty or conflict or crisis that's causing that. And girls are always on the sharp end of that. Girls are chosen last to go to school. The boys often get sent to school first, where there's a choice of how many can go to school. Girls are for their own safety, their families might keep them at home. And then also you've got other risks to girls, whether it's early marriage, the consequences of female genital cutting, which I know is a big issue at the moment, where there's starting to be some progress, child labour, child trafficking. All of these issues have a disproportionately large effect on girls and can keep them away from school. But conversely, when a girl gets a chance to go to school, she's improving her chances of economically for the future. She's also far less likely to marry early. She'll have greater choice over how many children she has, when she has those children, the choices that she'll get to make in her life.
One thing that you hear quite a lot of around International Women's Day is, yes, things are bad in many countries across the world, but here in the UK, things are fine, aren't they? We've pretty much got gender equality. I mean, is that an assessment that you agree with? Do we need International Women's Day here in the UK?
I think you need International Women's Day everywhere in the world, and that includes the UK. And I think where you've got families that are living in extreme poverty and facing those challenges every day, there's going to be a sharp effect on girls for what the impact is for them, and I think we need to pay very close attention to that.
What kind of thing do you mean when you talk about that?
I think if a girl isn't being able to afford sanitary protection and that's keeping them out of school, I think affecting girls and boys, but making sure they've had a decent meal, making sure they're learning properly. So some of these things are around girls and boys and are common across poverty, but you always need to look at what the opportunities are for girls who are caught on that sharp end and to look out for them. And at the other end, I think where we're looking at young women entering the workplace, how women connect with each other and support each other, I see huge progress, but we still do have a pay gap and we still do have issues that we need to address to get women right to the top in leadership positions across all organisations.
It feels to me as if one of the big issues facing women in politics in particular, but also women more generally today, is what's happening on social media and with the internet. There's been a lot of focus recently on female MPs talking about some of the abuse that they're getting, death threats, rape threats, putting panic alarms, in their homes. Is that something that worries you?
I've not had a lot on it, but maybe having this interview I'll be inviting. But
apologies if that is the case, by the way.
Exactly. I was an early adopter of Twitter. I used Twitter very extensively during the time living in Downing Street because it provided an opportunity for me to have that public profile that I thought warranted the position. You need to put some of yourself in the public domain and share what's going on because you're in a position that has an impact on other people's lives. But of course, the web's changed. It's the 30th anniversary of the World Wide Web this year, and I know that there'll be quite a lot of celebrations of that during the course of this year, but there's also the caution and the complexities and the social consequences from it. So I think we need to take all of that seriously. And the very specific issue around the danger to women with that, I think there's danger to men and women, I have to say. But, you know, knowing that, you know, with the death of Jo Cox, I think there's that heightened awareness. That was a truly, truly tragic outcome to something that we think came from having a public profile, having, you know, a presence, a kind of a digital presence. So I don't know that we'll ever really know the reasons, but it feels like those are the serious consequences.
You've also been talking a bit about trying to find a voice and use the number 10 role that you had, opening the door to let lots of different people in. I always imagine that it must be quite a difficult role being a Prime Minister's spouse, particularly for someone such as yourself, who's, you know, very successful, very strong, independent woman. How did you find it?
Because Gordon had been at number 11 for such a long time before, for a decade before, I was used to a role of having a, you know, husband, a partner who was a political figure and had his job and his role, and for the most part was able to lead a fairly normal life. The move to number 10 was a bigger change than I anticipated it would be, because you suddenly find yourself in a spotlight an awful lot more and not necessarily wishing for it. But I could still carry on with a lot of things, but I think I hope I did, I used the opportunity of being there to engage with the opportunity and understand the privilege that I had, which is why bringing people through the door was so important, but also engaging in different campaigns. I took the opportunity to, it was a range of things, but I led the Global Maternal Mortality campaign, but I also was involved in campaigns to help bees and to go and visit. I worked with a domestic violence charity, I worked with the Maggie Cancer Care Centres, I was volunteering with a lot of different organisations that could benefit from my being there.
It feels as well, it's not exactly a job, it doesn't have a job description, does it? But at the same time, there's a very particular role that you have to play. It kind of feels that you need to be kind of confident, but not too forceful.
I don't know if I agree with that.
No.
I think it's absolutely not a job. It is also not a role. There's no official type. You're not a First Lady because you're a head of government, not a head of state. And therefore, I think it is a difficult place for a spouse to occupy. And I would defend the right of any spouse in that role to do as much or as little as they like. You know, if you have a young family there, as I did, a large part of your time is devoted to that. So there isn't a set role or set things that you need to do. So it's there to do something with and create that opportunity. But you're also there at the time you're there, and everything else is going on. The business of government is that priority, and then protecting your family life is the other priority.
We've got a man at the minute, of course, who is the spouse of the Prime Minister. I just wonder if you think any of the kind of coverage of Philip May has been a bit different to some of the women who've gone before him.
I think there is differences in the way we talk about people in different roles and the kind of gendered roles that we give people. I don't think there's much written about Mr. May's outfits and what he wears, whereas I always felt that I was being asked that question. And maybe things can move on from that in time. I think the purpose of International Women's Day is exactly so we can flag up the issues about those differences and discrepancies. And if we always fall into those very strict gendered roles and expectations, then we really don't progress together as humanity.